You got to really look and pay attention because at first I just kind of, you know, a lot of the rocks and bones, I thought, a bird could have done that.
Mm.
And then once it gets so intense and everything with a rock that big and in your living room when you come home from church
Mm-hmm.
with a locked house, your dog's hiding under the bed upstairs, you know a bird didn't fly in your house and leave a big old round stone like that.
Well, since I live up in Washington, I've noticed that my dependency on Darrell has gotten greater because of the fact that I don't have access here. I'm 5.5 hours away, so it's probably a question better suited for you, Darrell.
Yeah, I haven't been up here because of the weather. You know, it's been so hot and all the bugs and all that. So I usually come up here once the weather cools down and
Mm-hmm.
maybe after it rains a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I haven't really been back up here since then at all.
Right, and the times I'm up here is usually
Yeah.
once a month around the 1st to visit my kiddo, and so when I have access to the area, then I usually stay the night right around this road. I never really stay the night here because it's a super big commitment emotionally to get ready for a pucker up moment. And I'm ballsy enough to stay the night outside on somebody's property, but to do it alone, Les Stroud style, um, when you know that things can get that close to you, and they do here, it just, I'm not ready for that moment yet to do it alone. I would want to be on a landing, where I could see the sky. And here it gets super dark. So experiences here have been kind of minimal as far as the typical stuff at Darrell's home, which was the honey hole of all paranormal research, right? But here it's still confined to these little tiny things that happen here that you just are little head scratchers. And so it's still about 10% of what his 100% was in this area until it's not. And then when it's, an eruption, a supernatural eruption, then it just turns into this moment where it was worth the wait, it was worth that giant gap of nothingness. And so the tracks have certainly died down. We're used to grabbing tracks out of here and hair and stuff like that, but you slowed down on like feeding.
Yeah, I haven't been up here baiting it up, for a couple months now, like I was doing every week. And also, it hasn't rained, so it's hard to see tracks now.
Yeah.
So that changes the dynamic of everything when it gets hot. And, I was recording every night, so I could tell on the recorder when it was more of a full moon for 3 or 4 days, a lot more activity, a lot more sounds. That's when I actually recorded the really good sounds in September of that year, was during a full moon time. So that's just, I don't know why it is. And then now also, as it's getting warmer and the rivers down below, all these little water spots up here have dried up. So they tended to come down to the river more to get water and fish and get food and all that during this time of year. So.
And in between the time that we last talked, I, stayed at the Montana Vortex. We were there for 2 nights with Joe Hauser and Tammy Fox. And I was hoping that going to the Vortex, just like the Oregon Vortex, charges you up, right? Like I would come back here and something would happen because I would have this latent charge, or supernatural charge around me. And it hasn't happened yet, or I haven't noticed it or appreciated it to the degree that I should. But, that's what Matt Johnson said. Whatever his story is, I know that portions of it people have a problem with, but his research area is in Southern Oregon, or it was, and he was saying that going to the Oregon Vortex charged him somehow to have these supernatural experiences in his research area. And so that's not why I went to Montana, but I put these stories in the back of my head and I say, okay, I can discount so much from this individual or this group or whatever, but there's a portion of it, because I've been to Matt's areas, where it's the same as here. Whatever here is so highly intuitive. It's not really an intelligent thing, it's just utterly intuitive. It knows what you're thinking to a degree that it's personal. And so those kind of things get under your skin, and you know, you tend to try to believe as much as you can handle to interact with it, but so far nothing. It was super quiet. We were here last night, your FLIR camera died down, and that was around 11 o'clock at night or 10:30 at night. I heard something strange off to my right, and but the moon, right, the full moon isn't just the full moon. Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto, which may or may not be a planet at this point, I tend to think it is, are totally, utterly aligned with the full moon on Monday, but tonight it's going to be super big. So we're having these celestial events, and everybody's just kind of like going on with the daily news. I've never even heard of this many celestial events all happening in a single year. It seems like they're getting better and better and more awe-inspiring. And so we saw that last night, and I think that that means something. It means more than a celestial event. I think it might mean something to them. I don't know what, but if I were to say this is the Mayan calendar unfolding right now, or some kind of apocalyptic moment here, it feels like that. Like, I feel like we're on the burgeoning of some kind of information and revelation. So we'll see what happens. Well, this is one of, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 tracks. Mark Parker took some, so there's maybe 10 or better tracks, including smaller ones. But this is a track that my son cast here. It's cast in hydrocal, and you know, that's a nice ceramic plaster casting. And what you can see here is the inside of a foot, the toe in particular, coming down to the ball of the foot and the heel. And it was just one of the tracks that we pulled out of, you know, the 9 others or so. And I think it tells a pretty good story of an individual walking barefoot through the woods back here. I mean, am I to say that everything's a Bigfoot? No. But we've gotten pretty good at finding tracks in this area. They're not hard to find. I mean, you guys even found some tracks. And this is very difficult dirt and substrate to leave a track in, because it's very spongy. It's like stepping down on a mattress. It wants to slope and curve to the foot. But you don't see that here. You see a 90-degree punch. And this is one of the more delicate ones that we had, as far as something coming down, punching in the substrate like that. Is there hair in here? Probably, maybe, I don't know. But we have so much. Well, there's something in there actually that does look like hair right there. The thing is, we have so much hair, as I was saying, we have so much hair that this is just a small sample. Well, actually, this is the entire sample of all the hair here, but in here are individual small samples of hair that have been found mainly at Darrell's old property here. So everything here was either videotaped the moment we found it.
Yeah. I found 3 or 4 down in here also, and I had photos of them somewhere.
Yeah.
I sent them to Tobe.
And, you know, as forensically as we could pull these hairs out, we did, with tweezers and clean gloves and all that. And we just, you know, what do you do with all this here? Is everything going to come back as anomalous as the stuff with the knees? I don't think so, but there's more than hair in here. There's this. And in here is this fungus that was left behind based upon the question here in the pandemic. And I mentioned that last time I was here, about whether or not there's a cure for COVID and can we meet. So right after COVID happened, I still came down here once a month, like I always do, is around, I believe, the 1st of April. And so it was a day like this, and I just stepped out of my Jeep and I said, listen guys, we're in a lot of trouble. I know you're here somewhere listening, however you're doing this. And I said, I think we need to meet, because we're in a world of hurt and we need help. Can you help us? Can you get us some kind of treatment or cure? So I spelt something out on these little blocks that I have on this altar stump down in the woods, and I
Like
can't
little
remember.
Scrabble pieces.
I think I wrote "Can we meet?" or something like that. And a couple weeks went by. I went back to Washington, and Darrell shows up, and the blocks had all been rearranged on top of the stump, and it spelt the letters Towpi, I believe, Topi,
Yeah.
or something like that. It was almost phonetically my name, right, Toby. But that's a leap of faith too far for most people. But then Darrell says there's something weird and slimy sitting on top of this fossil.
Yeah, I don't want to touch it. I didn't.
So he took a photo of it. I'm like, I don't know, is it like a fish gill? It was black, you know, and it was kind of, I don't know, maybe the size of a $50. And so I shopped it around, the photograph of what it was. And it came back as being this fungus that's around here somewhere during a certain time of year called black witch's butter. And the fungus is utilized for upper respiratory infections, and it's also a way to have a trip and meet the land spirits. I heard something happen up here in the woods just now.
I thought I heard a whine.
Oh, I wasn't quite sure what that was.
But it was probably that big, like the size of
Yeah,
an
but
actual
now
silver
it's-
dollar, and it was kind of folded over his little
Now
artifact.
this is all that's left.
Once it
There's
dried
this
up.
little tiny example of, I forget how to say the actual
Is that a
mushroom's
hair
name.
weight?
I think that's part of the...
Oh.
We ended up finding more of this up in Port Orchard, Washington, and it grows, you know, on dead logs, mainly big sticks that have moss on them in the shade. So is this an answer to my question here of what's going on? All I can tell you is that I told a gal about this in Portland, and she had a COVID positive friend that she suggested go to a Chinese herbal medicine shop and buy some of this based upon what I just told you. And he had a remarkable recovery. Now, a lot of people are having recoveries from this when they shouldn't. It's a very weird illness. So is it related to this? I don't know. But it's one interesting story regarding, you know, all the things that happen here. Some of these things are from Port Orchard, Washington. So this is just an ordinary broken toothbrush, just the bristle part, and we used it to excavate the red dirt off of the knee impressions that came back from all analyzed studies that we found on these knee impressions to be off of a humanoid type figure with unclassified hair attached to the knee impressions of something that is plus or minus 1,100 pounds. So we were, you know, delicately removing the dirt off of the hydrocal. In this case, it was Fix-It-All actually, which is a little less resilient than the hydrocal is. Nevertheless, we had a place where we would hide this or stick all our little excavation tools, and this one was removed one day sitting in the shop balancing on top of the kneecap, which wasn't something I did, so I kind of wondered if Darrell got in there, was kind of helping out and remove some of the dirt. But all right, then we have the next moment, maybe 48 hours later, inside the locked garage, a little toy. In this case, it's a little blue, I think it's a little blue velociraptor. Cute little guy. He has age and wear to him, which I think is important to the story because it's like a found object. So he was sitting upright on top of the shelf in this locked garage. Again, I asked Darrell if he had grandkids over, if this was something that maybe was left by one of his kids that came in there, and he didn't really have any grandkids
Not
over
at
that
that
often.
time, no.
But
and it was dirty and old, like it was weathered, had patina on
Right.
it. So
there's so many
Yes.
objects in here that were left to us. The little bobber here was set inside actually it was set outside my trailer in the gravel. But the interesting thing about it is that we just went fishing. And so I asked Darrell, you know, is this your old bobber? Because I don't collect one. But again, it has age and wear and a patina to it like the little dinosaur does. Then we asked, you know, after we got to know the phenomena a little bit more, and we came to kind of realize that Darrell was an extended experiencer, he's like, well, I wish they'd leave a toy. And so this was left outside of behind Darrell's truck. It's like a Tonka truck toy, like the inner part of a car toy or something like that. So I think that was an answer to a question. And then we asked, oh no, this things get weirder as we go along here, but my girlfriend, who has an ability to kind of see things outside of space and time, said that she sensed that we were going to get a crop circle type something left near the property. And I said, okay, well, that would be really interesting if we found a crop circle in the middle of the gravel bed or something like that. But the next day, I find these 3 circles that are all connected behind the truck. And it kind of reminds me of what you would see, you know, laid down. And if, you know, you're remote viewing or something like that, you only get these fleeting images. And so maybe that's tied to Washington. This object was left behind Darrell's truck. It's like part of a pipe that has been broken apart. So I was having cell phone trouble when I was driving truck, and I called Darrell up and said, I don't know if I can be home in time. I got to go to the cell phone store, maybe get a new phone. It's acting up. So the next day, you know, I'd already moved in, and I had my aluminum boat parked off the side. And so I went out there to do something, and I looked under my oar, and sitting underneath my oar, kind of hidden, was this muddy cell phone. It's an old Sidekick phone that I don't even think they make anymore, right? Where, you know, you type here and it's, you know, T-Mobile. Well, that's kind of weird. I never even noticed that I'm T-Mobile customer. So they're on my plan. So, but it's totally bizarre. Like, how would that ever get inside my boat?
How would any of this ever get out in the country,
Yeah,
in a country house where there's no one around?
and it has the patina
That's
on it. Like, you could just see this thing sitting at the bottom of a drain lake. That's all Cottage Grove Lake is a drain lake. I mean, that's where the London tracks came from. And, you know, maybe it's a nod to all that. If we're going to talk about other witnesses saying that they recognize objects from here, which you kind of have to wonder if some of these things that are left behind are ways to introduce you to other humans that have activity going on. This little rubber goldfish was set behind my trailer near one of the glyphs there, and a gal on the internet swears that this is one of her daughter's potty training fish, and she too is an extended experiencer. And she goes, we would leave these out in the woods sometime, and as a reward, or I'd throw them in the toilet, you know, for my daughter to learn to potty train. She goes, I know that's it. And so, I mean, that's a crazy thing to say.
Where would all this stuff come from? That's what I was always wondering.
Yeah.
How does this just show up out of the blue, out in the country, in the middle of nowhere?
I don't know. I mean, here's a, look at these. I mean, these are all giant stones, and they're not just stones. This is a piece of quartz that was set right behind my trailer. How am I ever going to miss that? You know, sitting in gray gravel. I mean, it's a beautiful stone. This one too. I mean, is that carnelian stone? They seem to like carnelian stones. You're not going to miss these, especially if they're sitting on the hood of your truck. And these are happening as soon as you turn your head. Now, this is really interesting. This is slag, right?
Like molten metal?
Molten metal. And it was an unexpected thing to start to find on their property. Now, did somebody smelt and molten metal at Darrell's property beforehand? I don't know. We never could talk to the property owners, but up in Maury Island, certainly they talk about molten metal falling down from UFOs. It's a huge event that happened in 1941 near Vashon Island at Maury Island, where citizens and fishermen saw donut-shaped UFOs drop molten metal down onto the fishing vessels and into the forest.
Wow.
So I'm kind of following up on this story here with this, and we'll see what happens with that.
What was the thing that I videotaped dropping out? Was that metal? Was it? Yeah.
I mean, this was never hot. I don't feel, I've never put a Geiger counter next to it. I probably shouldn't be handling it, but it's a fairly large chunk of what feels like aluminum. And I used to play this off as just being maybe the prior owner making something or working on a car, but now I kind of have to wonder.
Yeah, you know,
Like,
I mean,
what did we
that's got to
find?
get pretty hot to do that. I don't know. I was kind of new to the thing. You know, when I moved down here, my saying is I was normal when I got here. So I wasn't aware of gifting and all the Bigfoot stuff at all. I was just a greenie. Then I met Toby, and he had been around and he knew about all this stuff. And it just kind of fell into place with all the gifting and stuff. But just out of the blue, stuff would show up in the middle of the day. It didn't have to be at night on a cold, dark night. It could show up at 2 in the afternoon. You could go in the house to get a drink and come back out, and here would be a rock sitting on the hood of your vehicle, or some kind of little child's toy sitting in the gravel. And there's nobody around. I mean, it just makes the hair on your neck stand up, because you're thinking in your normal mind, there's somebody out here, you know, and it's kind of a little bit scary at first. But then after about 20 times, it's like, well, yeah, here's 3 rocks sitting on the deck in the morning. You know, it's just me and my wife and our little dog. I mean, out in the middle of nowhere. So it's just kind of messes with your head. But I'm not sure why they do gifting. I mean, Toby's been around more to, you know, hear the stories of people that have had all that. I just know weird things would just show up out of the blue. And then we could just be having a normal conversation, like we could be talking about a baseball game or something. Or we were talking about hunting, because I hunt. And the next day, here's this arrow laying right here in the driveway.
Right.
And it wasn't shot there by someone. It was an old arrow that was, you know, muddy and all that. And then where does this stuff come from? Does Sasquatch have like a locker somewhere out in the woods that he goes, oh yeah, I'll do this today. But it was just weird. And you didn't even have to ask for stuff or whatever. It would just be a random conversation about something, and it would show up. So it was just kind of freaky.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was a little bit like having a genie. A lot like having a genie.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder about that word, genie or jinn, because you had to be careful about what you talked about. Because just like Bill Murray or Dan Aykroyd's character in Ghostbusters, not clearing his mind, and all of a sudden the Stay Puft Marshmallow comes into, you know, the picture. We didn't choose our destroyer, but we definitely, I guess somehow we were choosing how we wanted the interaction to go. And it was very thoughtful, the way that it did it. It didn't really do anything to freak us out by leaving us a crazy gift. Now, the animal kills, I think, were gifts as well, because when we were asking for a taxidermied rabbit, it brought us a dead rabbit with a rock sticking out of its head. And, you know, it was a very thoughtful thing to have done, but yet a lot of people were disturbed by that story. As far as what I think overall is happening and why they would gift in general, I think it's just to move into some kind of relationship, some kind of, I use the word grooming process, but it's these secret schools that you get involved with. And this is a part of some kind of initiation to get involved with this secret school or this relationship with the supernatural or forest spirits.
Where do you think they get all this stuff? Out in the middle, well, you know where that is. Out in the middle of nowhere. It's just,
well, I think
boom,
some of
out
the, for example, I think they get these things from individuals that have either left them or they've taken them from other extended experiencers. Not necessarily all extended experiencers, but when it came to like the core drill wood pieces, you were talking about earlier about the cattle mutilations, how, you know, when you drill into something with one of those core drills, it pulls out the chunk that kind of looks like a little hamburger bun, for the lack of a better term. And we were getting those gifted in Washington. It was an old wind chime set that had been missing for years, and it suddenly turned up basically at our doorstep. And Erin, my girlfriend, who's a Bigfoot witness, said, wow, you know, I hadn't seen that thing in years, and here it is just sitting in chunks in front of me. And so we got these little wooden circles, and then all of a sudden, Darrell's still living down there, and he gets a little wooden circle at his property in an area of significance. Then you go back to the wood carvings that I do, and there was a piece of the wood carving from Port Orchard, Washington, that was right on his property, and I didn't bring it down, to him. So objects are finding a way to apport. We have enough verification through a guy named Timothy Renner, who runs Strange Familiars podcast in Pennsylvania, that the supernatural is communicating through space and time to move objects, to basically say, yeah, I can do that. That's beginner school. We can do that all day long. It's whether or not, well, can they move individuals? Is this, how people go missing? Are they entering in too far and wandering into these envelopes where
Like
suddenly,
the photo I have of that flash in the woods coming out of the tree.
Right. I was telling you earlier about the scientist at the Montana Vortex, a guy by the name of Nick. And I guess 15 years ago, they were rolling camera on Nick as he was using dowsing rods on the Montana Vortex. And he gets to a spot as they're rolling film, and his hands start to disappear as he slides into an opening in the woods in broad daylight. And so they're watching this guy's hands slowly go away. And I think it went all the way up to his elbows, and he described feeling his hands disappear, but being able to see them.
Oh, wow.
And everyone's gasping, like, your hands are not there, your arms are not there. So he backs out. So is that what's happening here? Are we, seeing evidence of this happening?
Yeah.
And I think they leave gifts for people that have the right motivations for this. And Darrell's, heart is pure, and I think they like that. I think they like this area, and they've just been looking for someone to possibly trade with. I mean, you kind of started to trade with them a little bit here. I mean, before they were bringing gifts, right? And now you start to bring gifts like food for them. So that would be interesting to see where this could go potentially with Darrell, if he could nurture some kind of dialogue or relationship with these beings. Because I don't think it's just Bigfoot. I don't know how many beings potentially you could actually start to befriend here. Man, this feels weird saying this out loud, but I think that something like that could be possible.
I was just thinking Bigfoot's like Santa Claus. He carries a bag with all his little goodies in there, and oh yeah, I got a dinosaur, so that'll go cool right here on the counter. And next day, oh, this guy's maybe doing this, so I'll put 3 rocks on the top of his truck. I mean, because you could look the property everywhere and you wouldn't find anything. And then all of a sudden, here's a child's toy sitting on your counter of your shop, or in his boat. There's 2 or 3 things that got left in his boat, or on his awning when he had his little awning out on his trailer. That was kind of a hotbed on top of that awning, because they're tall and big, and they can just. I mean, for us, it's like this, and but it was just random things, just out of the blue, and a lot of things had to do with the number 3 for some weird reason. They put 3 rocks here, 3 scratches on the ground. 3 of this, 3 of that, 3 bones.
This gets into numerology too, because the number 3 and 3 threes actually come up again. 666 comes up again. You talk to people about 666 and they automatically get hyperbolic about, devil. But maybe 666 is hidden knowledge. Maybe there's something to numerology. These things seem obsessed with numbers. The number 3 would be, in this particular, 3 objects maybe lined up in a triangle, or 3 stones on the roof of his car.
Yeah, another triangle too. They did a lot of rocks in a triangle shape.
Or 3 deep scrapes in front of my trailer door that looked like,
weird.
12-inch dig marks into the gravel. Very specific things that they want you to see. And are the numbers just chance? Why? Everything else seems to have this meaning to it, like, we want you to notice that we hear you talking, and so I think there's meaning to the numbers. I don't know what.
I don't either. I just saw that there, that the number 3 was prevalent with a lot of the rocks and everything, and they were in a triangle shape a lot of times when they would lay them out on the deck or on my roof of my little pickup, or on the ground. I mean, it was just a gray gravel bed, so any foreign rock or object, you would notice it. And sometimes the agates and the quartz would just be laying there, 3.
It was right after you moved there in the garage. There was something that you didn't recognize sitting in the garage. I can't remember
That's
what
right.
it was.
Yeah, I can't either.
Some kind of gift.
And then the little cork that was in the back of this little truck.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, out of the blue.
Yeah, a cork like out of a tequila bottle, which is interesting because I had just bought a bottle of tequila the night before and was remarking about the cork, and then all of a sudden you find a cork down here right by the altar.
Yeah, it was down here.
Yeah.
And so I didn't mess with it or anything.
Yeah.
I just took a photo of it.
I didn't know tequila bottles had
And
corks.
then, so I took the little gray truck and I went to the car wash, and, you know, after these roads, I washed it all out. I had nothing in the back of it. I sprayed the bed out and everything. I get home, and about 2 days later, I walk out there and look, and here's that cork laying right in the center of the back of the truck bed. And how did it get from here to there? I'm just thinking, what's a crow's following me around and dropping that, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just
I mean, other people that have
weird
visited
stuff
his
like
property
that.
have had stuff happen too, and it's followed them home. Little objects, little toys, or strange stones found on people's dashboards of their car. In the case of my mother, she found a little plastic black dog sitting right by your gear shift in
Yeah,
her
it's
locked
just
Subaru Outback. So it has kind of this pot life or this latency where I think when you go to the property, you get supercharged, and maybe it follows you for a little bit and then wears off, like a half-life. It's a theory.
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. The last day that I was there, when I was leaving that property for the last time, I have the two trucks. I have a newer truck too. And so Cindy had brought me back to get the newer truck on our last trip. And when I unlocked it and got in, there was a real pretty white feather sitting on the console in the middle. Just just perfectly white little bird feather sitting right in the middle of the console.
There's something to feathers in general, and that's a Bigfoot thing.
And how could it get in a locked truck?
Anybody into the supernatural element of Sasquatch will talk about being gifted feathers. Now, birds lose feathers all the time, but when you find a feather sitting in a locked car in a specific spot, or you see one, in my case, going, the Roomba, you know, the little floor vacuum going around the house, and sitting on it is a white feather on top of the Roomba. Or a photograph of my mother sitting on top of the Roomba that I had locked inside my trailer. It gets really specific about who's doing what and what time. So, you know, these are things that seem to be woven together like a spider's web, and not so much just a typical Bigfoot story.
Yeah, just like with you guys, now that you're kind of involved with this stuff, you got to really look and pay attention, because at first I just kind of, you know, a lot of the rocks and bones, I thought, you know, a bird could have done that. And then once it gets so intense and everything, with a rock that big and in your living room when you come home from church with a locked house, your dog's hiding under the bed upstairs, you know, a bird didn't fly in your house and leave a big old round stone like that.
Yeah.
And then you know, the three, I mean, birds, I don't know if they got trained birds around here that are going to put 3 rocks in a triangle shape, or
Well, large.
large rocks that, you know. So at first, being a normal human, your mind tries to debunk everything. I did. And then all of a sudden, you know, all these kids' toys are showing up and all this other stuff out in the middle of nowhere. I know.
Well, like the piece of bubble gum that I just threw a piece in the woods, by the way. So, I mean, last time I was here, it wasn't bubble gum. It's a piece of Tic Tac gum, right? And I come and check this area, I chew on gum, I throw it in the woods when I'm done with it. I'm notorious for not chewing on gum for a long period of time. And so I go down here to check the gifting area, and sitting on that rock is a white piece of gum, dead center, sitting on that rock. And that just totally told me that, you know, I didn't see anything happen last time I was here, but something saw me throw that gum deep in the woods and found it. And it, you know, it had to be something that was acknowledging the fact that I was here. Now, is it just a simple nod that I need to not litter so much? I don't know. I think it was more of like a game of some kind, but all right, so show and tell time. These little cord boards have photographs on them from Darrell's property here. And the bottom picture here shows the top right edge of his freshly built shop. And this would be the door jamb, the upper 7-foot angle of it. And so
It's
Darrell,
upside down on the photo, but
is it?
yeah, see it should be, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. Anyway, it's dirty, greasy handprints that Darrell noticed. And so we kind of wondered whether or not the contractor accidentally left a mess behind, because these were painted a couple weeks beforehand, but they're kind of hard to miss. I mean, I can't imagine
No.
a greasy giant hand all over the paint.
That and the fingerprints were this wide.
And then we looked at the size of it and the fact that, I mean, I knew just from other people that you're looking for greasy, large handprints when you're looking for Bigfoot stuff. But when you're talking about scale, this photograph shows the dusting that we did because we preserved it. You know, I was kind of hoping we would take the whole door jamb and preserve it, but that wasn't going to happen. So we dusted it, and here's the scale, right? I mean, here is the pinky, the beginning of the pinky, and the separation of the palm right there. And so that's this shot. And it's just huge. I mean, it's massive. This one didn't turn out that well, but this would be the bottom crease of the palm. Unfortunately, I think we over dusted it, and but we have a pretty good photograph of it. And you know, those are still there. I went and visited the new owners, like I told you last time, and these aren't gone at all. They're still there to be looked at. And then this was one that Darrell noticed on the back of his trailer. Will you tell the story?
My truck, yeah. I just came out one morning in my newer truck, and I had went to the dump prior, and I have one. It's out in the country, so you got to haul your own trash. And I had one of those webbing nets that I'd put over the trash when I went to haul it to the transfer station. So the next morning I come out, and I don't notice these prints right away. I look, and my webbing has been taken out of the truck, and I had it hooked to the four corners, you know, and it had been thrown back behind this other little truck, which was probably 30, 40 feet away. And so I walked back over there to look in the truck, and it had broken. Two of the little plastic tabs that hook were broken off. So I walked back to look at the truck, and I saw these big, it was a little bit of moisture in the morning, so you could really see them on the truck bed. Is those like 3 or 4 fingerprints. And the cab of the truck is here, and they're kind of like this at an angle. So whatever did it had to actually almost reach up over the cab of the truck. And it looks like it just kind of did like this on the side of the truck bed and then went down and grabbed the net. You know, it just kind of like that. Other than grabbing it like this, it just kind of touched the truck bed on its way down to grabbing the web and throwing it out. And then it left those on the...
And we never dusted anything.
In the moisture.
We weren't expert dusters at, you know, grabbing prints, so we just grabbed the construction chalk from the tool chest and dusted it with peacock feathers, believe it or not, that we had on hand. And, you know, it was ready to do, so we pulled it off with just some clear tape, packing tape, and that's damn near, I think it's about 12 inches. That's not a really good photograph, but from that finger to that finger is close to 12 inches, as whereas mine's, you know, about this width of a dollar bill, maybe six inches or so. And look how skinny my fingers are, and just puny like a little child compared to the girth of whatever this was. And yeah, it's pretty incredible.
You could kind of see the, you know, the dermal ridges because it was kind of a greasy fingers where it drug across the truck.
Yeah.
At the
and you
time.
just have to wonder if they're just sitting at the tree line waiting for you to find these things to have a good laugh. You know, it was a pretty ballsy move on its part because it stood closer to the house, closer to the motion activated light on the passenger side of your vehicle, and then it reached over the cab with I don't know, like a 7-foot arm reach. I mean, right for the NBA to do something like that.
Yeah.
And played with your spider webbing.
Yeah, just grabbed the net and ripped it out of the truck and broke 2 of the little.
And then the
Plastic thing.
last one I have here is from something him and Cindy found, which was inside the guest bedroom.
Yeah, that was a scary room that no one would go in after that. I call it the Chucky room, you know, because it's Chucky. Because it was like a little kid's handprint on the door, 2
Yeah.
of them like this. But they were not normal chalky handprints.
So, you know, I immediately said, Darrell, we gotta take the door off the hinges and preserve it. It's got to go in a museum. You know,
Yeah.
these are strange, alien-looking handprints, right? And this is just a black light. It's hard to describe this chalky white substance because it infuses to whatever it touches, as to where if you had, you know, put your hand in baking powder, it would just wipe off. But this doesn't
Yeah.
do that. It's almost like a greasy white something. And so it showed up pretty good in black light. And again, we dusted it. So I took this to a conference where Darrell Sims was at, who worked with Dr. Roger Lear removing implants from people that said that they were abducted. And I showed him this, I showed him the photograph, told him the story, and he brought me these. These are images from witnesses that have supposedly been abducted, right? And these are similar handprints of this.
They look almost exactly like them.
This one in particular, right,
Yeah.
from Dallas. And I don't know the scale of that image. It looks like it's on, here's a photograph of it, I believe right here. It looks like it's leaning into the glass window, probably of this poor person's bedroom. But they kind of bend like rubber, like, you know, like Gumby or something, you know, just like
Yeah,
there's
it
this
was
weird
really
spacing
strange.
between each finger too that shouldn't be there. Like, you know, we have these V gaps between our finger. I mean, I guess they do kind of flatten out like that a little bit, but not that wide. And certainly there should be a thumb, and it seems to have an absence of thumb. And then I had a white handprint on top of my head in the trailer. I woke up one morning and I had a little white handprint on top of my head. You know, I got up to go shave or go to work or something, and I didn't have a mind to take a picture. I was actually kind of nervous about it. You know, like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
I wasn't clued into this scenario from Darrell, but I thought, you know, I know something gets into this trailer and leaves me stuff, but did it come when I was sleeping and put this little tiny weird hand on my head?
Yeah, after you found rocks in your sink and on your bed.
Yeah, yeah. And then these turned up in Port Orchard after I moved to Port Orchard. Actually, before I moved to Port Orchard, we found chalky white handprints on all 4 pillars of the entryway of the cabin. And so I asked my girlfriend, it was a brand new cabin, I was like, did the construction workers, you know, paint or, you know, wash up here? Did they maybe grab the 4 pillars? And she swears that those were new.
Yeah.
And she said, you know, they weren't there before you came, and now they're here. So they're quite a bit larger, though. I don't know if those are related, but that's the kind of weirdness that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, yeah, we thought that because the people we bought the house from, their son that was raised in that room ended up committing suicide a year later after they moved out when we bought the house. And that was his bedroom. So after we found the handprints, I put my recorder in there for a couple nights, and I got that recording that says, "I'm dead."
Yeah.
And it was just freaky, so no one wanted to go in there.
It had that raspy, I'm dead quality to
And
it.
then about a month before we moved out, the light bulb inside that room exploded. And the light had been shut off for over an hour when it happened. And, you know, the light had the light fixture, you know, the square light fixture up against the 2 light bulbs. And all the glass was underneath it on the floor in a pile like this.
Oh, I didn't hear this part. So
Yeah,
it wasn't
I
even
had it.
sitting on the
No.
fixture. It escaped the
No.
fixture and went around it. And
Went
to a
around and was
pile?
just sitting on a pile on the
Oh.
floor.
There you go. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in that room. So we tried to avoid that room.
But now the new owners, they're right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have any of that action going on. that they claim.
Well, they say their stuff walks around upstairs.
Yeah.
So they don't go upstairs, which we slept upstairs because that's where the big master bedroom was.
Mm-hmm.
And then, our dog Izzy that sleeps by our feet would get up in the middle of the night and stare at the wall like she sees something, but there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
That, and then we had a big bright light lit up the whole bedroom one night, just like a intense white, light lit up the bedroom for maybe, seems like a while, but it's probably 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And then it just goes back to total darkness. And you're talking about a big old 2-story house, no houses close, no helicopters in the air shooting a spotlight down through the window. It's just random bright light lit up the room.
Mm-hmm.
Intensely lit it up, like brighter than daylight.
And so he's not the only one that talks about that. We have extended experience or friends that live near Port Orchard, Washington, and they describe giant, bright, phosphorus white lights that explode in their backyard periodically.
Wow.
And they say they're so bright, there's no explosion, it's just total illumination and darkness.
And it's not hot. There's no heat from it.
No.
It's just like, you can't explain it. It just happens. And me and Cindy, my wife, both saw it.
No.
It was just right after we went to bed, probably around 10:30 at night.
So it happens.